Hello everybody, how are you all? Have you been enjoying Nature Journaling Week? I have. I can't say I did anything yesterday. I was actually outside journaling in the garden with my hands and fingers. But the weather's been fantastic here in the US, so we're so lucky at the moment. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to have a brief look at what we did yesterday. Well, wasn't yesterday, was it? Sorry. Last week. Shh, don't tell anybody. We're with it. We're very professional, really. We'll have a brief look at those bluebells that I was fiddling with last week. And today we're going to look at some herbs because, of course, we've got all these lovely flavours and tastes. Nature isn't just about what we can see and what we can smell. It involves all of our senses as well. So today we're looking at flavour. And when I was thinking about it, there's so much that we could really think about there, you know, because our Denise and I, we were together as we were travelling and doing our brush dipping thing. If you don't know anything about that, please do go and find us on YouTube, Travelling Brush Dippers. And the pair of us go out and about and we travel around and we interview people and visit places and paint. So there's a little bit of everything. That's the Travelling Brush Dippers. But we were talking about flavour and taste. And it's quite interesting that when we look at things that we see outside, you know something, there's an awful lot that we could eat and we don't anymore. I'm sure that ancient man probably did once upon a time, but we don't now. Did you know, for instance, that magnolia, the flowers, the petals of magnolia, taste of ginger? And they really do. And there's a kind of citrus after tang. And you've got fig leaves. If you get your teeth round a fig leaf, it's coconut. It's actually coconut. And who knew that until I watched a programme on TV called MasterChef? Hey, there's all these things that we used to eat and we don't. Another little delicacy out in the hedgerows, the May this year has been amazing. And the little buds of May as they come out to just nibble and eat are really quite lovely. Please don't try anything if you don't know what it's like, what you're eating. That's the point. Look it up first. Don't just go munching on anything because we could poison ourselves very easily. And I don't want to get into trouble for that. I can get into trouble without trying very hard. So shall we flip over? I'm going to flip the camera and we'll have a look at what I've been up to. I'll turn some lights on so that you can see things. Everything, all the whites look a bit blue in here today. So it's all right, we'll just turn it over. Let's have a look. So just 1 second, I'm going to flip you. And we're coming back down to the work here. There we go. And I think you can see most things here now today. Get you nice and high so you can see what I'm doing. Turn some light on. Faffing about here looking for the switch. There we go. Now, let's get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. We'll get rid of the dust. Oh, the pollen here today is absolutely epic. I've been coughing and spluttering like a good one. Doesn't often get me like that. When we were working last week, we produced a bluebell picture, didn't we? With cling film. That was it. And I've trimmed it up. I've taken the edges off it and I have cut it in two. And my grand plan here, I've stuck this onto this page and I would like to do some kind of border around here at some stage. And I've taken this and I have put it on this page to mark the size of it. But I have left a page like this. I've put a cross there so that I know not to use that page because I'm actually going to stick this one in here like that. So what on earth is this for? What's that for? I'm going to draw some bluebells in there. I'll keep the border so that I've got some form of rigidity and I can turn it over. And when I've painted my bluebells, I'm going to cut them all out so that they're there framed and you will be able to see this picture and that picture through the bluebells. So you'll just have the bluebells there in relief. Now, if you'd like to join me for that, I'm going to do that on Monday, the 12th of this month, Monday, the 12th of June. And I will be here on YouTube at 10:30. So do join me and I will talk you through that, how we do a cutout and we get this beautiful relief so that we can see all of that together. So that's Monday the 12th and that is at 10:30 in the morning, British Standard Time. Okay, so please do join me. I'd love to have you here for that. But for now, we're going to have a look at herbs, beautiful, beautiful herbs. And my plan, what I'd really like to do, zig a zig ah, is I'm planning on a circle and I want to do a wreath circle of herbs. And I'd like to write the word flavour down here. And it would be really excellent if somewhere on the page I had room to write a recipe. That's what I'd like to do. Do a recipe that involves herbs. I just thought that would be fun. Here's a saucer, obviously, and I'm going to just come around here and lightly pop in, just gently pop in a circle, and that will be my starting point. And the next thing I want to do is come in there and start drawing and painting some herbs. What do I need to draw and what do I need to paint? Well, this is entirely and completely and utterly up to you and how confident you might feel about the whole thing. I know that I want to involve a couple of nice sage leaves. So I'd need a stalk up through here and then I'd come through and I want to stalk and the leaf up there and pull that through. So sage down here somewhere. I would like to have some, this is going to be basil. So that's the tips on the top of a stem of basil. And then I want to do the little flower buds about to break out, some little tiny leaves. Basil leaves are these lovely heart-shaped leaves. So again, that would be my stalk. And I want to pull some basil leaves up through like this. I'm only going to deal with a few bits and pieces that I want to do initially to think about where my circle's going to be. I'm not going to go mad with the drawing. There you go. So I just want this is going to be purple basil, by the way. So I just want another leaf in there. That'll be fine. We can do something like tarragon or rosemary through here. The other thing I know that I'd like to do around here somewhere, I've got some lovely marjoram in the garden. So I'd very much like to introduce some marjoram hither and yon. And that again has these interesting little rounded leaves. Nice veins. Little bits of stalk. I'm drawing with a 2B pencil. It's a nice soft pencil to work with. I would advise that you stuck with something like that. It's ideal for drawing. HBs are a little bit hard, so I wouldn't be using one of those, but a 2B is nice. We could do some rosemary up through here, couldn't we? And the other thing I've got in the garden, which is absolutely wonderful at the moment, is some lemon verbena, and they have long kind of leaves like this. So I'd like to pop a few of those in here and there. The smell of them is absolutely gorgeous. They're very nice if you're having a bath, and if you just pop them in the bath, they're really rather scrumptious. Now, thyme, we can do thyme, we can work with all that, we can deal with that, but I don't think that I need to draw it. What I do want to do is come in here and just get rid of some of the lines in the leaves. Now this is a really clever little rubber. It's a little electric rubber, but what I would advise is each time you use it, if you don't use it for a while, cut the end off it, because the ends do go hard and the colour that's on the end there will come off on here and make a mark. So if we start with a nice clean rubber, it's the best way to go. And something delicate like this is really rather great because it doesn't, you can get in all the nooks and crannies, little tiny bits and pieces. There's an art to using them. The very first time you turn it on, you just press, and the very first time you do that, it goes off on its own. It just goes all on its own. And you do have to get used to manhandling it. I don't like putting my hands across my work. I'd rather brush it with a brush. This is just a makeup brush. This is actually a hairdresser's brush. It's faded out in the sun. Look at that. But it's a hairdresser's brush for flicking off hair, but it's really rather good for the kind of thing that we want to do here. Where do I go now? I'd like to think about some of the colours that I'm going to use. So if I'm thinking about basil, this gorgeous purple basil that we can grow in the garden, you might be able to, I can't. Basil doesn't like my garden, doesn't like me. I know basil doesn't like to grow outside. That much I do know, but oh, it's a right pain in the neck when you're trying to grow it and it won't, and you just want it. So it's easier to go to the supermarket, isn't it? It's a terrible thing to admit, but it's true. So I've got cobalt blue and alizarin crimson, and I've got this purple, but it's not quite dull enough. I need it a little bit duller. So I'm coming in here for some Payne's grey, and I'm going to lift some Payne's grey, put it in there. And let's just knock it right back, because this is the kind of colour I'm after. That strange purpley blue. And into that, I think I might be a little devil, and I might just add a little bit of cerulean blue here for the odd highlight. So let's see how we go. Oh, that's not bad, is it? That's a nice colour. I'm not going to stress over much about my edges, because I intend to go all the way around everything and add some pen work. So there's the cerulean blue. That's nice, isn't it? Look at that. You can lift the highlight out by coming in with a dry brush, and you can just make your colour thinner and paler by adding water. So some of these could be quite pale. And then we can add a little bit of blue, and you can come into the darker tone, just add a bit of that. Cauliflowers don't hurt, don't worry about cauliflowers, not worried about those. It all adds to life's rich pattern. Not terribly worried about it all running either. If it decides that that's what it wants to do, then we're going to allow it to just be free form. I'm using a number 4 brush. And I want to just see, I'm drying my brush, and then I'm going to come in there and just lift off a little bit. Just looking to see who's here. I've got Denise, that's lovely. Hi Denise, we were talking about you a minute ago. Were your ears burning? And we've got Nuala from Ireland. Hiya. And we've got Pam F, who says good afternoon to everybody. And we have handcrafted by me. Who's that then? Who's that then? I want some bits of that a little bit darker. So what the way to do that, I'm not going to add more a different colour as such. I'm going to mix up some more paint, and it's going to have more pigment in it. So it's going to be just more pigment, so that I can come in and I can just add a few scrumptious little darks. I'm going to just blend that a little bit. In here, that would be darker in the back there. So I want to come round, gently round there. I'm going to lift a little bit out, and then I'm going to drop in a little bit of the cerulean blue. Why not? Just makes it a little bit more interesting, doesn't it? Makes it more fun. We don't want them all to look the same, they'd be boring. So that goes in there like that, and then a bit of the cerulean and put that in there. Now, that I'm intending to go back in with the pen, and with the pen I want to come through and introduce the lines on the leaves. So we'll do that in just 1 second. Lots of different ways of doing all of this. Now these up here towards the head, I want them to be a little bit pinker, a little redder. So I'm coming into the paint this end with the red, and I want to just make some of these little bits and pieces a little bit darker. And if it looks like a big dark blob, come in, clean your brush, and then just lift out here and there to make it a little more interesting. And the colour of the little flower heads are going to be the same, but we want a dark stem. So for that, if I take the colour and I'm going to make that up even more thickly. So now we're going from single cream down to double cream. And I want to use, I think I'll go, let's see if I can get away with it with this brush, the tip of it. Yes, that's all right. And just a little stalk here and there. Just a little bit, bring that round there. Leave that alone, we'll leave that, and then we'll come over here and we'll deal with something else whilst that dries. The marjoram's quite a yellowy green. Now I've got this sap green here, and this is a sap green from the SAA, and it's very, very yellow actually. It's quite bright, and it'll suit me for now. I would be a bit wary of it if I was using it for some other projects maybe, but for today it's going to be fabulous. But I need a darker green as well. To make my darker green, I think let's try, this is my cobalt blue. I'm using that purely and simply because I've got it in the palette. Let's see how we get on with it. So cobalt blue, and if I add some yellow to that, so here's my quinacridone gold. What kind of green will that give me? Yes, you see that's darker. Let's make enough so that I'm not scrabbling about in a minute, trying desperately to make it all work. The darker leaves are over here, so I want to come into that. Gosh, that is quite dark, isn't it? I don't really want the paint that thick, not at this point. So I'm just coming in, and again, I'm going to just pull out. So you don't only have to use your brush, you know, as a tool to lay on. You can use it to lift off and to as a mop. So don't ever be afraid of that. I'll do that. Now I'm going into the brighter yellow because I'd like that to come in here and across into these 3 little petals of leaves here. We'll leave this one for a minute. These I'm going to do half and half, so that's the paler green with the darker green on top. Don't ever be afraid of using 2 brushes. If most of your paint's landing up in your water, don't do it. Come away from that and use 2 brushes so that you can put on with one and use the other colour for the darker shade. So here we go. I've got, let's get the paler one on here. So that's my paler colour, and then I can just nip in there without quite so much. Getting very excited about it all here. So that's the paler colour, and then I can drop the darker colour in next to it. So there's absolutely no reason why we can't do that. Otherwise you're spending an awful lot of time faffing about putting your paint in and out of the water and losing a lot of your pigment. So we can do that, a bit more colour down through here like so. This one I want to be quite dark, so in fact I might put that in there like this. bring it through and round. And then how about we go to the blue, just blue neat, and put some of the blue in there for the shadow. That'll work. The paler colour up here, on there. And then come down to the blue and let it run into the green and get rid of the blob. We don't want that. Okay, so that's given us some pretty different blues and greens and colours. Hello Tina, nice to see you. And Teresa, lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us. Now leave that alone because that's wet. Oh, I'll tell you what we might do though. Let's take our green and I just want to run a couple of stalks through so that it's not sitting there all on its own looking lost. Now over here, we're going to come into this. These again are quite bright and acidic green and I want to just infill like so. Now let's try something different here. These have got very, very decisive veins on the leaves. So I'm going to use this is my, oh look, porcupine quill. And I'm coming into that to make the indentations into the paint that will serve me very nicely as the veins for the leaves. You can use an orange stick for this if you haven't seen me use this technique before. That gives you a really, really good effect. You need to have your paint quite juicy like this. It's no good being mean with it, so that when you make the mark on the paper, the paint can run into the indents. I'm going to go a little bit darker on this petal here because it's this leaf behind. Keep calling it petals. It's because they look like petals, don't they? So to come down with that darker green there, and this time we're coming through and we're going to indent like this. Even a bit darker in there. I find that this technique isn't always as effective if you go in and you indent afterwards and if you add more paint into the dent afterwards. It's better to do it at the time as you work. I've gone in sometimes and tried to add a shadow, make it darker, and I've added the paint on top of the marks on the indents and they don't really work as well. You can see that. It looks damaged to me, whereas these don't. That looks as though I've bullied it. But that gives you a very good effect. So I can come in there now and do that. So how can we do the sage leaves? Another way to give yourself a really good lovely vein on a leaf that stands out is to come into something like this. Let's do a few more so that you can see exactly what I'm going to do with it. I've put my pencil down. Let's use this one. It's not as good, but it'll do. So this through here, like that. So sage leaves, maybe not quite as pointed as that, but we won't be pedantic at this particular point in time. We'll just pretend that we can cope manfully, all right? And then I want to remove that as we did before. And this time I want to use a really nice scrummy green. So let's see if we can make one. I'm going to take cerulean blue this time. Sage green, it's a strange colour. So let's see what we can do. Let's use that blue. And if I add my quinacridone to that, going into the purple. Just, oh, that's okay, that's coming along a bit more. I say chaps and chapesses. That's not bad, is it? So I've used the purple that I made for the basil and I've gone into it with that. Right, so I wanted a darker colour because I want to try something. I'm coming up here, using the whole of the brush to make the most of it. And with this, timing is going to be of the essence, because what I'd like to do is see if I can create the veins in the leaves with water. And I want them to be almost dry, but not quite. So I don't want any shine on the paper at all. I don't want shine, but I want the paint to still be damp. So I want to get rid of those blobs that I've got there. And I need a really, really fine brush, because if we hit this right, let's just fingers crossed, and we use a very, very fine brush. So I'm going to use my rigger brush. What's a rigger brush? It's one of these. Look, this is a brush that was developed by Turner to paint the rigging on ships, hence the name rigger, because it's long and thin, so it holds a lot of paint to paint a long, thin line. And what I want to do with this, I've got water on my brush, but not too much. Let's see if it'll work. And if I paint up through the leaf, do not have too much on the brush, because if you have too much water, it pushes too much away. Now, I might be too dry here. You can see what I'm aiming for, and it's all in the timing. Can you see what I've done? It's all in the timing. If it's too dry, won't do it. If you have too much water on your brush, makes a mess. But you can get some lovely effects. It's too dry now. Hot daylight today. I'm really pushing my luck. But that is something that is well worth experimenting with, because the water will push the paint away and it can give you some lovely, lovely effects. The reason why I wanted that dry, I'm going to come into it with one of these clever pens. I don't know if we can all find these everywhere, but this is a Pilot Frixion. And it's quite nifty. It's a normal ballpoint pen, but on the end of it, we've got this strange thing, and it's a rubber, because, believe it or not, we can write with it and it will rub it out. So very good if you're into creative accounts. But for me, I'm going to use it to outline my little leaves. And they're really nifty, because very often when you use a pen, something like a fibre pen, on top of watercolour, the nib all clutters up with the watercolour paint, and you'll find that it stops working and it won't work. That doesn't happen with this. I don't know why, but it doesn't. And so it means that we can get some lovely effects, and we can get in there and we can draw and we can work, and it doesn't give us grief. Now, it's entirely up to you. Some people like to draw first and then fill in. I felt that I didn't want to do that today because it would make me too slow. I knew it would slow me up because I'd be too careful, whereas I just wanted to get on with the work so that you could see how I'm going to represent my herbs. If you like to write first or draw first with a pen and then come in and paint, that's lovely, because these are quite waterproof. If you leave them to dry a little bit, you'll find that you can go in there and you can use watercolour on top of it, and it's not an issue to you. So that's got to be really, really useful, really useful. So for instance, if we're talking about something over here and we want to, what should we do? Let's have a think about what we can do. If we're thinking about Sweet Sicily, we've got lovely little white flowers like this. Lovely little, dear little things. So we can do this and do the flower heads and the umbels. Are they called umbels? And then, so we've got that. So we've got the Sweet Sicily, and then we can come in on top. I'm going to stay away from that just for a little minute because I just want it to relax. And now I need a long thin brush because this is a very delicate leaf form, and I want to come in here with my greens, same greens. And this time I might be introducing these florets of leaves. So all you're doing this time is this very, very shattered edge. And again, I will be drawing my veins up through this. So this way we do it like that. And if we're painting the other way, like the first one, I would come in, let's fill the brush. I'm being a bit of a tart here with my poor old palette. I'm going into one green, another green, and then I'm having a bit of that because then it makes it interesting for us. And with this, I'm just digging the brush up into the paper to get that random edge. I want it really random because it's quite tough sometimes. We get too fussy with it and we land up making it too smart, and I don't want to. I'd like to kind of put a haze of green across the bottom of this, so I'm just picking up a little bit of my green. See, I can go in there and it doesn't hurt it at all, doesn't move. Soften it, soften it. So that gives me the gentleness of the stalk, and I'd like to just add a teeny bit of yellow just to make that interesting. Now wait and wait and wait, because then we can come in here and we can do our stalks. I'm deliberately leaving that because I want to do something else in here. We can do all sorts. Rosemary. Now, a couple of ways to do rosemary. Rosemary and thyme, sage, rosemary and thyme, eh? A couple of ways to do rosemary. You can print with your paint, with your brush. We can take our colour, and I'm going to, again, rosemary is quite a dark green, isn't it, if we think about it? So let's go back to this. And that's the cobalt. And then I want to add my quinacridone gold. I'm going to have a bit of sap green in there as well. That's not bad. And this time I'm going to use the brush to print with. So I want to come in here, and we're thinking about rosemary. So print with your brush. Just use this. I'm going to bring some of it out here just to make it more interesting. And rosemary has these little, pull some of it to make these longer down here. It needs to be a little bit longer down on the base. And it has these little, these pretty, pretty little purple flowers. Now it's not as dark as that. And I think they're bluer than that. So I'm going to come in. That's better. A bit more. Try it on here, see if I'm happy with that. It's not bad. So then they have pretty little bluey violet flowers. I'm going to bring some through there. Our poor old rosemary bush in our garden, nightmare. We like it so much that we eat too much of it, and then the problem with it is that the poor old bush thinks to itself, I'm dying, and we're in grief with it growing again. So leave that to just do its thing. Now, when we're dealing with something like this, there's our stalk for our plant. Be arty with your pen. Don't come in here and go quietly and carefully all round the edges. I'd like to absolutely scribble with the pen. Just give the impression, think about the hedgerows and what you're seeing out there. So pull it, work it, make it interesting. And just make it more arty than not. We all get too careful sometimes. I don't want to do that. I want to give it freedom. If you were painting outside, this is maybe how you'd get your sketch done. Fast, furious. Have you ever tried drawing and not taking your pen off the paper? Just keep on drawing a thing and just squiggle, but don't don't come off the paper. And this is what we're doing here. So I'd like a few more of these flower heads. And again, I'm just giving the impression I want some of them to come over here, like that. And a few more of those. Right, so that's fine. So we've done that. One way to do rosemary. There is another, something else that you could try if you'd like to, and see how you feel with it. If you come in here and you drop down some paint, so where shall we do that? Maybe we'll come in this area here. And you drop down some paint. So we're going to go with these greens. And then use either the end of the paintbrush you're using or come in with another. And this time you're going to scratch. And this can give you quite an interesting effect as well. Water. So what I'm going to do with this, you know, believe it or not, is put it in there. I'm going to pull that through. Down here. And this is going to be juniper berries. I have decided. So this will be some, oh, that went there. Sorry, sometimes, you know, the brain's doing one thing, the hand's doing something else, and the mouth is working on something completely different. They don't always work together. So if we do that, this is a jolly good way to paint fir trees too. So I just want to drop a little bit of dark. So this is the bluey purple that we were using earlier on. I'm using that for my dark. I'm just pulling that through. Bear in mind that if you're doing something like this, you are damaging your paper, and you know it's not going to survive. My paper's a bit thin and scrappy in this book. It's not absolutely ideal, unfortunately, but hey ho, you can't have everything, can you? But what I'm going to do here is I want to just come in and I'm going to imagine that I've got some berries. Let's put some under here. And one or two down there. And these are going to be, this is a piece of juniper, because juniper we use for flavouring. And I have the purples here quite nicely, so that will do. I want to use this purple from my previous piece of work, and I'm coming in, and I just, not too much, and I want to introduce my purple like this, and in there like that. There we are. And what we can do with that is we can come in if we want to and lift out a highlight. You could go in there and you could actually put in a white, I think I might do that in a minute, a little white dot for your highlight, and it might be nice to go in with, I'm using my purple with a bit of Payne's grey, and I'm just going to add a bit of real dark in some of those like this, so that I've got some shadowy areas like that. And that will give you the idea that you've got juniper. All right. So you can see where I've gone with that. But you get the idea. I want to work my way around this whole area with the pen and with the paints and create this lovely floral wreath. I might go out in the garden and start to pick things in a little bit so that I've got ideas. One last thing I'd like to have a go at. We could, how about something here? We're going to come up through here. This is the rigger brush. Press and lift off. Bit of dark green, bit of light green. I'm coming from the same place. Come in, press and lift off. Ooh, too much. I've got a drip on the end of that brush and I do not want that. Don't want that. So into here, press, press and lift off. I'm going over the top of that. Get this lovely line. If you use a rigger brush, 90 degrees to the paper, 90 degrees, and I'm using my finger for balance, you can get these lovely fine lines. Finest lines you can imagine, beautiful. If we press a little bit harder, we get a thicker line. And of course, if you really lay the whole brush on the paper, you get something like that. So if you want fine, you've got to use the tip, and at 90 degrees to the paper, it's got to be to get that fine finesse for little grasses and hairs. But beautiful brush for all sorts of things. I want to just flick something out here. I'm going to come in there and do some, put the brush on and lift it off. I'm going to bring that through here. What's she doing now? So through there, because in that area there, I want a little area that's going to look as though it's white. Now we can't obviously make it white, so I'm using a yellowy green, and I want to come down here and introduce the onion bulb, which will be darker here on the base. So I'm just going to blend that. Now, this kind of painting is difficult with a rigger brush. I used to have a student who used to come to me, and she used to paint a whole picture in a rigger brush. I don't know how she did it to this very day. I don't know how she did it. And now I'm using some, you can use either burnt sienna or burnt umber. I want a bit of both on my brush. And I'm quite happy if this is going to bleed up into this. Doesn't matter, because now I'm going to come in here. I'm going to do the little roots. And this is going to be chives. So there's the plant. But what we need to introduce now is to come in, and I want to come through, and I want to pull in another leaf up to there and then through there. And I need, Now think about it, Sharon, think about it. We need to bring the flower through somewhere where it's going to show, so we can pull it through into this area. So up, round and through. And then the head of chives is great fun. All we need to do is introduce a damp area on here. And then I'm going to add some alizarin crimson, like that. You with me? Are you with me? Oh, Rosie says, I'm thinking garlic bread with fresh herb butter. Yes, please. I want some dark in there. And I'm just going to let that bleed and do its own thing, so that we have some chives. All right, we can encourage it a little bit more if we want to. So this is just water, and the water will pull the colour out. So that's okay. Chives tend to be a bit, don't they? You get what I'm talking about. So I'm going this route. Just bring it out a little bit more on the sides. And because it's drying, I can put a little bit of texture in there now. I'm also going to be a little bit of a devil, and just because I want to, I'm going to throw a little bit of the cerulean blue in, because then that pulls in the cerulean blue from elsewhere. So we'll do that too. So we've got chives in here. Now, I'm telling you what would be nice in this is, rather than the cookery type of recipe, is to just write a salad recipe, the herbs that you might put in to make a nice dressing for a salad. That would do, wouldn't it? That would be quite fun. Okay, so we've done that. Now, I wanted, dropping everything here, and I'm sure it's probably your fault. Now, what I wanted to do, if I imagine that I'm going to go around it and I'm going to draw the details, what would you do with this? Could you do anything with that? Sorry, I'm thinking on my feet here. With this, all you've got to do is just help it. Don't do any more, just help it. Like that. All right, to give the impression of the spines on the fur. So I reckon we need something in there that's going to be some kind of salad recipe for me anyway. And then down here, I had some other ideas if you wanted to follow this crazy plan. I was thinking to myself, you could potentially, this is a bit of embroidery thread, and we could stick a piece of embroidery thread across the page. So if you did that with some PVA or whatever, I want to do it on a separate page on here so that you're not distracted with what's going on. We could thread that across there and glue it. Get that out of the paint there. And then I've cut some little bits and pieces of card. I found some mount card that was brown, but of course, as luck would have it, it wasn't brown all the way around. So what I've done is I've just used a marker pen, and I've done my edges so that it looks smart. And then all I want to do is draw a line across it so that it looks like a peg. Black line across it. And then we could stick that to our clothesline. And then we could do a bit of string hanging from our clothesline. And if you did the knot there like that, you could then individually paint, let's find a finer brush, your individual herbs hanging from the line. And you could label them. So you could do a whole line of herbs, think about what you've got, what you want to mention, and that would give you rather a nice feature, and you could write the herbs, write the Latin name underneath, and that would be quite a nice way to display them as well. Now, for those of you who might enjoy a little bit of Zentangle, do you like Zentangle? What the dickens is Zentangle? It's lovely, fun patterning and writing and drawing. And the theme of this is flavour. So I wanted to write that down here on the bottom. I need to be careful because I'm going to use a Sharpie. Sharpies are waterproof. You could use them for all of this work. But when you've got a book that's like mine and the paper's not as thick as it could be, we need to just be aware that that could potentially come through onto the other side. Therefore, I've planned that that is the page that my bluebells are going to be stuck onto. And therefore, I know that this area just here will not be affected because it will be covered. So I know that this here is all right. And that's why I shoved my ring of herbs up the page rather than had the drawing down here. So let us have a little think about what we could do with this. It's flavour, and it's difficult, isn't it, to get yourself organised with writing and calligraphy. For goodness sake, how much more do we have to do as artists? So I'm going to just come through here, and I reckon that's about straight. Just looking at it by eye, I'm going to give myself a line to start with, because I'm quite capable of going off on my own, doing my own thing. And we want flavour, so we're just going to use bubble writing. So up, down, round, like this. F, L, A. Like this. V, O, long thin O, U, little bit on the side. We will need a little bit on the side sometimes, and an R. Like that. So that gives us our subject for the day. But how do we make that more interesting? Well, I'm going to come into this and I'm going to just think to myself, I want to make it look curved and I want to make it look interesting. So what am I going to do? I'm going to imagine that the highlight is up the middle. I'm going to come through. I'm going to put stripes on my F like this. I'm going to go right through and across there, and then a bit around there, and I want to do something there, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, right? And I'm not going to colour all of it in, I'm just going to do some of the stripes. So what would happen if I did this kind of thing? So you can understand now why I'm saying to you that I'm concerned about the other side of my paper and the marks coming through, because I'm really going to work it. You can tighten up your edges afterwards and go over them again, so don't worry if you're a bit fractured down the edges. But this is a lovely way to just make interesting writing. You don't have to do it all with pen. If you wanted to, of course, you could paint this. But you see, look, doesn't that look fun? You could do it in candy stripes, couldn't you? Proper candy stripes. I'm leaving my middle quite sharp there, but you could, if you wanted to. We'll do it on the next one. Hold fire. It's difficult to be precise when you're doing it in this instance, and I don't want to spend hours doing it. It's as interesting as watching paint dry, isn't it? But you know what I mean. I'm going to do that, and we can curve it all around here like that. So if we wanted to, we could potentially just do zigzags into the middle like this and leave the middle rough like that. So you can either have nice smart edges, or we could have the rough middle. Up to you. You decide what you'd rather have. But it's a fun way to do your writing without getting all screwed up about the fact that we can't do calligraphy. And you know, my writing's not neat and tidy. Well, there you go. This is a way around it. Look at that. The other way you can do this is pop your highlights in straight away. So just bear with. It will all become clear. So I can come in here and I can put my highlight straight down the middle of my letter like that. And in fill, you could do each letter a different colour. You could do a different pattern on each letter. You could, have you ever tried putting shadows on a letter? Let's do that with the next one, and let's think about how we'd go about that. Now in the middle there, I'm going to just come across and leave my highlight down there like that. So that's another way to go about that, which is quite fun. The other thing we could do, let's put a shadow on this here. Imagine where your light's coming from. Work out where you'd want your light to be coming from. And it's quite traditional to have it coming in from the right, up to you, or you know, whatever. What I'm going to do here is imagine that my shadows are down this side. So in this instance, we could come through and we just put the shadow down here. So I could do that. There is more than one way to do everything, and you will think of ways that I wouldn't even dream of. And that's part of the fun of my job when I'm out and about and I'm doing a demonstration and I watch somebody do something and I sit there and I think, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? Now something else that's quite fun is little circles, you might want to do a finer pen for this, but I'm just doing little swirls, like Celtic swirls. Little teeny ones here, like that. And it's a very, very fast way to cover ground. Just little swirls. How about a zigzag down here? We're going to do that. Cross there like that. They don't have to be precise. Doesn't have to be amazing. And then just come in and fill in some of your zigzag. And that will give you a good colour pattern as well, good interesting Zentangle pattern. And maybe the other side of your zigzag could be a colour, so that's okay too. Just have a think about how you might want to handle it. If you're taking too long with bigger letters with a pen like this, Sharpies of course come in two different sizes. You've got bullet tips as well, so that will speed you up. I've also got marker pens, so of course you could also go into there with marker pens, or if you've got the brush pens, they're rather fabulous for projects like this too. Very, very nice. And the other thing I might even consider is going over some of this with some glitter paints, mica paints, to give it a bit of a ka-ching, which would be really quite interesting. And what could we do for our final one? What could we do with this? Oh, I'm thinking. I quite like this actually, so I might go back to that. Let's have it, but I'm going to go up and around this time rather than straight. Just do it with larger, like this, as though it's across the whole thing. So just choose a starting point and then remember where you're meant to be next. That's a joke, isn't it? Sometimes I walk out into the kitchen, don't know why I'm there. We all do that too, don't we? Dear, oh dear. There we go. And then down into here. And you've got to admit, it makes your lettering look so much more interesting, doesn't it? No highlights on that one. If you wanted to add them afterwards, you could easily do that just by using a white pen. A white pen or a blob of white gouache. Either way, it's fine. But that gives you some lettering to go with your particular design. Now, I've just had a thought. It would be quite nice as well, wouldn't it? I'm going to go into the kitchen, and when I've finished here, I want to put several stripes of glue down here, and I'm going to go and hit my spice rack, and I'm going to put some lines of different herbs, you know, herb leaves and different seeds and bits and pieces through here. I think I need to finish this first, but then it might be an idea to actually put some here. Or of course you could press some leaves and then we can stick them in as we go. If you've got seeds that come from here, you could put a little packet of seeds there. So many different ways that we can play with this particular idea. But let me bring you back round to me for 1 second so that we can just have a little quick chat again. See if I can, oh gosh, the camera doesn't want to do it. Sorry, chaps and chapesses. Hold fire just a minute. Oh, I can't move it. I'm going to have to do it by hand. Hang on. Wait a minute. Me doodah's not doing me doodah. There we are. Oh, it's hot sitting here under the lights. So that's it for another day. I hope that you might like to continue with some of the other nature journaling. If you've found it yet on Facebook, please feel free to put your pictures up there. That everybody would love to see it. And if you're not sure how to, or you don't want to do it yourself, if you'd care to send it to me maybe, and then I'll quite happily do it for you. All right. But please come back if you can on Monday. So that's Monday the 12th, just checking the date, Monday the 12th, and I will be here at 10:30, and we're going to do a little bit more with those bluebells, and we'll see what we can do with those. I've just got a plan and I want to see it out, and I think that as you were there for the beginning, come and see the end for goodness sake. Now, time for a cup of tea, everybody. So get your thinking caps on, have a think about your herbs or anything to do with flavour, and I will see you again pretty soon. All right, everyone, lots of love to you all. Bye-bye for now. Bye. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye. Thank you.